Good evening. It's Monday, the 23rd of June, and here's what's making news around the world on World News Tonight. Global fallout. Iran strikes back, prompting swift reactions from world leaders across continents. Tragic attack. Suicide bombing at Damascus church kills 20, leaving community in mourning and shock. Heartfelt farewell. Beloved crossing guard receives wholesome send-off as students and community celebrate years of service.
From Colombo, this is World News Tonight with Amarsha Fernando.
Good evening once again. A massive U.S. operation named Midnight Hammer has struck Iranian nuclear sites targeting facilities at Isfahan, Fordow and Natanz. U.S. officially deny regime change motives, instead citing national security threats as global leaders urge restraint amidst rising regional instability.
U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth stated that strikes were designed to neutralize threats from Iran's nuclear program, not to provoke regime change. The assault involved 14 GBU-57 bunker-buster bombs, over 24 Tomahawk missiles, and more than 125 aircraft. General Dan Kane, overseeing the operation, said the precision attack severely damaged all three targets, but declined to confirm if Iran's full nuclear capability was eliminated. Australia publicly backed the strike, citing intelligence that Iran enriched uranium to 60%, well beyond civilian energy use. Japan voiced deep concern and urged a return to diplomacy, while North Korea harshly condemned the action, calling it a violation of Iran's sovereignty. Meanwhile, Australia prepped evacuation aircraft amid regional security fears, closing its Tehran embassy and pausing transport from Israel. The strikes come amid broader tensions across the Middle East, already burdened by conflicts in Gaza and Lebanon. President Trump's decision to join Israel's military pressure marks the most significant Western action against Iran since 1979. Analysts warn it could trigger a broader regional confrontation, especially as Iran vows retaliation and continues close military cooperation with nations like North Korea and Russia.
The U.S. dropped its largest conventional bombs on Iran's Fordow nuclear site, causing very significant underground damage, said IAEA Chief Rafael Grossi. Inspections remain impossible amidst ongoing strikes, leaving extent of damage, enriched uranium status uncertain.
The U.S. deployed bunker-buster bombs targeting Iran's Fordow uranium enrichment plant located deep inside a mountain. These precision strikes aim to neutralize Iran's nuclear capabilities. Though the exact damage is unknown, Grossi expects extensive destruction, especially given centrifuges' sensitivity to vibrations. Since Israel's attacks began on the 13th of June, the IAEA has been unable to inspect Iranian nuclear sites, restricting independent verification of damage or uranium stockpiles. Iran reported taking special measures to safeguard nuclear materials under IAEA oversight, complicating assessments of weapons-grade uranium. Iran holds over 400 kilograms of uranium enriched up to 60%, enough for 9 nuclear weapons if further enriched. Despite Iranian claims of peaceful intent, global powers remain alarmed. The strikes escalate tensions in a volatile region, emphasizing ongoing challenges in nuclear non-proliferation enforcement.
India's Energy Minister Hardeep Singh Puri warns of escalating Middle East tensions and revives potential Strait of Hormuz closure amidst U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear sites. India remains confident in diversified oil supplies to mitigate disruption risks.
The Strait of Hormuz is a vital maritime choke point through which about 20% of the world's oil and gas passes, connecting Iran and Oman. Any disruption could severely impact global energy markets and supply chains, prompting India to assess alternative routes. Amid rising conflict, India has diversified its crude oil imports to reduce reliance on any single route or supplier. Minister Puri emphasized New Delhi's readiness to ramp up supply from alternate channels, ensuring energy security despite geopolitical uncertainties. Following U.S. military strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities announced by President Trump, Iran launched missile attacks on Israel, signaling heightened retaliation risk. Tehran had warned of targeting U.S. bases and oil shipments through the Strait of Hormuz if provoked, escalating regional tensions.
Indian investigators say all three militants behind April's deadly Pahalgam attack were Pakistani nationals linked to Lashkar-e-Taiba. Two locals were arrested for harboring attackers. This incident heightened India-Pakistan's tensions, nearly sparking a broader conflict in Kashmir.
On April 22nd, a brutal attack in Pahalgam killed 26 tourist sheikhs in the region. Initially, police identified two attackers as Pakistani nationals and one local. The National Investigative Agency later confirmed all three attackers were Pakistani members of Lashkar-e-Taiba, a UN-designated militant group. The NIA arrested two local men accused of sheltering the militants before the assault, though no statements have been made publicly. The Resistance Front, linked to Lashkar-e-Taiba, initially claimed responsibility but later retracted, complicating militant group dynamics in the region. The attack triggered a sharp escalation, with India revoking the Indus Waters Treaty and launching airstrikes against alleged terror sites in Pakistan and Pakistan-administered Kashmir. Pakistan denied the claims, retaliating with missile fire, escalating tensions until a ceasefire brokered by the US ended hostilities on May 10th.
Heavy rains triggered severe flooding in China's Hunan province and Guangxi Shuang Autonomous Region, forcing authorities to evacuate hundreds from Shaanxi County and surrounding areas. Rescue operations continue as communities face rising water levels and infrastructure damage.
Intense rainfall in southern China led to widespread flooding in Shaanxi County, Hunan province and parts of Guangxi. Authorities swiftly evacuated hundreds of residents to safer locations, prioritizing vulnerable populations amid rising river levels and overflowing reservoirs. Local governments deployed emergency teams to assist with evacuations and provide relief supplies. Efforts focus on preventing casualties and minimizing property damage as rescue workers monitor weather forecasts for further rainfall risks. The flooding is a part of a broader pattern of heavy monsoon rains affecting southern China this season. Meteorologists warn of continuing unsettled weather, urging communities to remain vigilant and prepared for potential further flooding.
Let's go in for a short commercial break. More world news coming right after this. And welcome back. Spain secured a NATO exemption from the new 5% defense spending target ahead of the Hague summit. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez pledged to increase defense spending to 2.1% of GDP this year, citing social welfare priorities.
Spain negotiated an opt-out from NATO's new defense spending goal of 5% of GDP, confirmed through letters exchanged between Prime Minister Sanchez and NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. This exemption allows Spain to maintain lower military spending without penalty. Last year, Spain spent just 1.28% of its GDP on defense, the lowest among NATO members. Sanchez pledged to raise this to 2.1% in 2025, emphasizing that this level sufficiently supports Spain's NATO obligations while protecting social programs. Sanchez warned that escalating to 5% by 2035 would be disproportionate and unnecessary, potentially forcing tax hikes or cuts to Spain's welfare state. The decision highlights ongoing debates within NATO over balancing defense commitments with domestic economic priorities.
A suicide bomber opened fire, then detonated an explosive vest during evening prayers at Mar Elias Church near Damascus yesterday, killing at least 20 and then injuring more than 50. Syrian authorities point to Islamic State involvement.
Several people were killed and dozens injured when a suicide bomber blew himself up at a Greek Orthodox church in Syria's capital Damascus on Sunday. That's according to local health authorities and security sources. Syria's Interior Ministry said the suicide bomber was a member of Islamic State. He entered the Mar Elias church, opened fire, and detonated his explosive vest. A security source said 2 men were involved in the attack, including the one who blew himself up. The priest said he heard gunfire outside the church before 2 people entered with explosive belts and detonated them during Sunday Mass. It was the first suicide bombing in Damascus since former President Bashar al-Assad was toppled by an Islamist-led rebel insurgency in December. Islamic State has been behind several attempted attacks on churches in Syria since Assad's fall, but this was the first to succeed, according to another security source. Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa, who led the offensive against Assad before taking over in January for a transitional phase, has repeatedly said he will protect minorities. In a statement, the Greek Foreign Ministry condemned what it called an abhorrent attack. The latest assault underscores Islamic State's continued ability to exploit security gaps despite the collapse of its territorial control and years of counterterrorism efforts.
Nurses at Westmead Hospital's neonatal intensive care unit in Sydney have initiated a strike over critical staffing shortages and patient safety concerns. The NSW Nurses and Midwives Association reports that overcrowding has led to babies being treated in corridors and former storerooms.
They're among the most highly skilled nurses in our hospital system working in Westmead's neonatal intensive care unit, or NICU. They warn they are understaffed and facing growing demand from sicker, tiny patients. NICU nurse Jessica Charleston says the unit has 44 bed spots, but often has to find room for 50 or more babies. That also means not being able to provide one-on-one care. Anna Lowe is also a Westmead NICU nurse whose daughter Elsie spent her first week of life there 4 years ago. She says working in a unit under such stress is taking a toll. The Premier acknowledging how hard their work is.
Firefighters battle a large wildfire on Greece's eastern Asian island of Chios, with strong winds spreading flames across forest and farmland. Evacuations are underway in 16 settlements as the blaze threatens homes and causes power shortages.
The wildfire ignited midday yesterday in central Chios and rapidly spread on 3 fronts, with the most severe threat directed at the coastal town of Frontidos. Strong winds have exacerbated the fire's intensity and speed. Approximately 140 firefighters, 15 fire engines, and 70 forest commandos are actively combating the blaze. Additional reinforcements and aerial firefighting units are expected to bolster containment efforts by today morning, aiming to control the advancing flames. The fire damaged warehouses and forced precautionary evacuations in 16 settlements. Several areas experienced power outages due to the fire spread. Authorities continue to monitor conditions closely to safeguard residents and critical infrastructure.
Time for a short commercial break. We'll be right back. And welcome back. A year after 6 months on a transplant list and enduring multiple surgeries for hyperplastic left heart syndrome, 7-year-old John Henry received a donor heart last year. Now, fully recovered, he's back to playing, schooling, and living like any child his age.
We first introduced you to John Henry Lee about a year ago. He'd been hospitalized for 6 months due to a rare heart condition. But he warmed America's hearts when he announced with pure joy his life-changing news. High-fiving his friends at the Cleveland Clinic.
Congratulations.
I'm getting a new heart.
Yay, that's wonderful.
At 6 years old, John Henry had already been through 3 separate surgeries. The only treatment option left was a heart transplant. He spent 6 months on the waiting list, but eventually receiving his new heart. And just this week, a critical milestone, the 1-year anniversary of his transplant. John Henry is now running around like a normal 7-year-old. He's back in school, doing rehab 5 times a week to improve his mobility and strength.
Ready? Go!
And reuniting with those special friends, the hospital staff who took care of him for so long.
Where are you looking? He's watching a dinosaur movie.
A grateful John Henry sending this message today.
Thank you, donor.
It was an emotional farewell for John Wentworth, a beloved crossing guard who's guided generations to safety. On his final day before retirement, both present and former students came together with a surprise to him with a heartfelt send-off he will never forget.
This was the walk-off decades in the making. That's John Wentworth, the longtime crossing guard and hometown hero at Upper Providence Elementary School in Pennsylvania. Mr. John has been doing this for the last 22 years, helping other kids after his own grew up. But now,
time to retire.
He's taking a step back. On his last day, it wasn't just current students, but former students too, who wouldn't miss it for the world. The crosswalk he protected for so many years, now lined with police officers and firefighters saluting Mr. John. A surprise to thank him for his service.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, yeah. I'm gonna miss you guys all. Thanks for being such good kids.
Thank you.
A round of applause for a job well done.
And with that, we come to the end of today's edition of World News Tonight. With the hopes of seeing you again, I'm Amasha Fernando, and we'll leave you tonight with the visuals of Legoland in Shanghai opening for the first time in China. Also, don't forget to send us your feedback through email at feedback.ad24english@derana.lk or via WhatsApp at 076 805 7933. Anuradhi Vikramasinghe will be joining you next with the nightly business report. Thank you for watching and have a great night.